You are saying the truth. So the purpose of consumer education is to empower the customer so that he can make the best use of the product. With the right information at his hand, we'll be able to decide if he needs to go with this option or not. A good consumer education program must have the following features. It must be simple. Consumer must be able to understand all the details, technicalities. The consumer must understand it very well. And it must be unambiguous. The need to draw a line between marketing and consumer education by bankers is imperative for better understanding and responsible behavior. Consumer education programs should focus more on possible areas of disagreement, especially the pricing and default issues. A well-articulated consumer education program is rightly a tool for reducing lending rates and banks.
One of the interventions that is possible in Nigeria to tackle affordable housing that I do believe we have in abundance and there's no constraint to it is actually religion. And that's why I'm trying to come to that faith-based position because there are examples of other countries where faith institutions have played significant role in transforming affordable housing, or at least playing a significant role in affordable housing. And I'm sure Nigeria, we're probably one of the most renowned countries in terms of our faith or religious institutions. But how do we deploy such resources to tackle the affordable housing space? In my view, you're not going to have a proper debate about affordable housing in Nigeria if you don't start from actually the end user, in being able to analyze the what we call the income pyramid. And I think some of the other speakers earlier yesterday have mentioned. But I think in Nigeria's case, we need a proper analysis of the income pyramid. There's an obsession about home ownership, but the reality is that the bulk of Nigerians, especially in urban environments, live in rented accommodation. But rented accommodation is poor quality, overcrowded, not decent. So the solution cannot just be about ownership of home. It has to be multi-tenant. And most housing markets are functioning. I mean, I know somebody talked about the United States, but rent is part and parcel of the intervention. There's going to be part of the income of your income group that cannot afford to either put a deposit down totally of owning of that particular asset. You need to have a solution or an intervention. An intervention, of course, there's a role for private landlords, but you need formal institutions, rental institutions that are actually providing affordable housing. And they could also be potentially, when you talk about developers, they could be purchased of completed dwellings for developers. So it's potentially a win-win for everyone if we can create those institutions that, in my view, have a significant role to play in tackling affordable housing in Nigeria.
To our mind, the biggest problem with housing in Nigeria and perhaps Africa is affordability. Affordability primarily in relation to finance. I'm sure everyone here wants to buy a house, but the vast majority don't have access to the financing that they need to buy the home that they want. The Federal Mortgage Bank, over the last 30 years, between 1992 and 2022, disclosed that they financed mortgages to the tune of about 394 billion naira. Now, if you convert that to US dollars at 650 naira to a dollar, maybe $300 million, thereabout. Now, if you put that side by side with how much was remitted by Nigerians in diaspora last year, 19 billion US dollars, you're talking somewhere in the region of 1.5% to 3%, give or take. So what it's saying to us is over 30 years, the government entity charged with the responsibility of providing mortgages is doing in quantum somewhere in the region of less than 3% of what Nigerians in diaspora remit every year. That gives us an indication of what the potential is if we can unlock that market to finance projects back home. Another area where there's massive opportunity is in legislation, because what has to happen is we have to unlock private patient capital if we're going to be able to move the needle in the space. Digitization basically helps to reduce friction in transactions, okay? But like, you know, in every industry, people tend to first of all attack the low-hanging fruits, but that's not where the big problems are for housing, okay? The landscape for housing, you can think of it in three streams: upstream, midstream, and downstream. Downstream is where you have a lot of people crowded, providing service. So rental, discovery, uh, providing aggregators, and all of that. Midstream is where you have the big issues, finance, okay? There's hardly anyone playing effectively in that space. That's a massive opportunity right now. Why is it difficult to break into that space? Because capital is sector agnostic. Capital doesn't care so much about what you're doing as to how much return you can give to it. And so if you have competition in other sectors where you're getting much more attractive returns, real estate is difficult, okay? It's tough. Your project life cycles are long. You're dealing with very many, you know, unregulated people in the space, okay? You're dealing with Nigeria's particularly special brand of inflation. So you start a project 2 years down the road. The CEO of Prince and Amas is here, probably bear me witness. Your cost has gone up by 50, 70% in some cases. So that mid space where you don't have the capital to quickly ramp up your project and edge is where the massive opportunity is. And then, of course, there's upstream, land assembly, project design. As you know, it's a lot easier to sell petrol than to explore for crude. So everybody crowds themselves in the selling petrol side of the business, which is the services side of it. What we've tried to do at Co-Build It is to build an ecosystem. So we're trying to create an ecosystem along the value chain for real estate. So we're active upstream, where we're originating finance as Co-Build It. So we're getting people together as investors to finance projects. We've delivered a number of projects using that model. And then we're active midstream, where we're trying to reduce friction in the procurement process. We've got a subsidiary called Bankole. Bankole tries to do two things: reduce the opacity in project procurement. So if you live abroad, rather than send money to your Uncle Johnson, who is probably not going to deliver the home you're asking to build, if you come on our platform, you can procure all of the services and get handheld through your project procurement process. And then downstream, we've got a solution called Caretaker. Caretaker provides facility and property management services, so communities can be managed on the platform. In summary, that's what we do at Co-Build It, and those are the opportunities that we see in the space. Thank you.
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. They'll be thrown dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you still have to 30 tenants, they are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
The cost of construction in Nigeria ranks among the highest in the world. Some of the causes are high interest rate, inaccessibility to cheap affordable funds, lack of skilled manpower, and marked dependence on imported construction materials. Housing Development spoke to some professionals who believe that if quantity surveyors are engaged in construction projects, they can recommend locally produced quality building materials for use, and this is a step towards reducing construction costs. For this professional, he believes the cost of construction in Nigeria is high as a result of increased importation. He says the use of locally produced materials will reduce the problem.
The cost of construction is high in the country now because there is much of importations. If you can use local content and engage professionals reasonably, the cost will reduce.
Nigeria depends largely on foreign products, hence the cost of importation adds to the construction cost. Ayodele Faleye says governments and regulatory bodies can stimulate local production of construction materials and reduce importation of construction workforce.
If governments or regulatory bodies can stimulate production of locally produced construction products or materials, that in a way will reduce construction costs.
He says the Nigerian government can take after the UK government by instituting in the construction industry that all building structures should follow building information modeling process.
If we look at the government of UK, they stimulated the construction industry by instituted an instruction that all building structures should follow building information modeling process. So by that process, at the design stage, on the drawing board, you do clash detection. Before you get to site, you have eliminated almost all the waste, and you reduce construction process. So by reducing waste, even from the drawing board, you have reduced the construction cost to some degree.
Professionals in the build sector also believe that if due process is followed in carrying out construction projects and the right professionals are engaged, the cost of construction will come down. They say there is need for appropriate professionals to be used in determining the cost of construction in every project before it kicks off.
It's because we are using what we call quackery, quack people, those that are not in the profession. That makes it somebody who read economics will go and be managing sites without knowing the ingredients of construction. That will make the whole entire construction cost to be high. But if you use the appropriate and rightful people in the construction industry, you will see that there will be control, especially the quantity surveyor. They are the key in the construction industry.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
Cut short was coined from cutting costs in construction. A few people have talked about post-construction, there's the construction process, and there's pre-construction. We have decided to play in the space of construction. And we basically are working to make sure that developers and project owners have a better experience and are able to achieve more projects. All the issues we've talked about have different parts, and it's always better for us to tackle it from all the different points. So we have focused on construction. What are we trying to do? 3 things Doctor talked about that the diaspora face, but I will tell you that even the developers themselves face these 3 challenges. One is the lack of trust, trust for their vendors, trust for their workers, which informs the way they run their construction. The other is the fact that there's lack of transparency as well. And of course, very little digitalization to make them more efficient. Construct has built a platform where developers are able to, just like Uber, have access to vendors, their vendors plus vendors of all their other colleagues who are on the platform, where when you want to procure materials, you put a request for that on there, you have vendors, bid for your project, and you can select based on what matters to you. I always like to use the example of music. Back in the day, if a young, talented person, released a song, they had to contend with the pirates in Alaba, Iweka Road, right? And those pirates determined how much they made from their own music, and they sold and made profits. And for many years, they tried to fight those pirates. We all know that exercise was futile. But with the advent of technology and building platforms like Apple Music, Spotify, today, if a Nigerian singer from the backside of Ogun State, for example, releases a hit, he can have that hit played everywhere in the world, and he can earn his royalties which he so rightly deserves. And so at Construct, we came up with a principle that when the existing system, first of all, is bigger than you and you cannot fight it, what you want to do is build an ecosystem. Once you build an ecosystem where value thrives, it will be left for the people outside to try to find their way into that ecosystem. And if they want to, they will have to align with the principles of the ecosystem. Uber did that. Yellow taxi man before, you stop him, you forget your phone in the car, that phone is gone. Uber didn't talk to him. Uber built an ecosystem. Today, inside that ecosystem, if I left my phone in a cab, all I have to do is report to Uber office. They will track that car and the phone will be returned to me. That is what we are doing at Construct. We are building an ecosystem where safe transactions can happen. How? We are vetting all the vendors who come on there. We're not only doing it once, we're doing it periodically. We're also making sure that the process of the transactions are safe. By using, for example, we have a partnership for goods in transit insurance. So every good bought on there is insured. Peradventure, somebody was driving you 20 trucks of cement and they had accident. He's going to call you and say, "Oga, yeah, problem there. You have paid. What you want is cement." He's telling you problem day. How do you deal with that? And really problem day, right? so that's one of the areas that we're tackling. The other thing is accountability. You're giving a guy money for a good, right, as a developer, and I know all the developers here, if we let them speak, have so many stories. You're giving a guy money for something, right, and he brings it and it's not what you want. You want to cast today. All your laborers are there ready to cast, and the rods you ask for are not what you want. What do you do? Even if you take him to court, you know the process. We've introduced accountability in the sense that there's an escrow where money is paid and money only moves to sellers when goods are delivered satisfactory. Point is, technology is changing the world everywhere. Unfortunately, Africa typically lags behind. I'll speak for Nigeria. But even worse, the property real estate sector is typically even far behind. So first of all, we're far behind as a country, then real estate is typically far behind for reasons that are very valuable. And that's why I say the sheer naivety of the young versus the experience of the old, together, it's a sweet spot, and we can do a lot together. Thank you.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
Housing is the most effective sector of the economy of most developed nations, also an important tool for stimulating growth. Housing construction indices are some of the most common measures used by analysts to gauge economic trends in Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD) countries. In more advanced countries like the United States of America, Britain, and Canada, the sector contributes between 30 to 70% of their gross domestic product (GDP). Investment in the housing accounts for 15% to 35% of aggregate investments worldwide, and the sector employs approximately 10% of labor force worldwide. However, Nigeria has an extremely low ratio of credit to GDP, and of the little credit provided by banks, only a fraction of it is for mortgages, although the size of the nation's economy, mortgage debt to GDP is only about 0.5%. Speaking with Housing Development on the impact of housing development on the subject matter, former Minister of Sport, Chairman of Godia Mayete Nigeria Limited, an estate development organization, Honorable Bala Kaoje, says housing is the most important sector of the economy to the growth of GDP. Also, as a bedrock to the economy, the housing sector has the potential to generate employment, increase productivity, raise standard of living, and alleviate poverty.
Apart from housing, I have not seen any other industry that can actually generate the jobs that will more or less end the issues of unemployment in the country other than housing.
He also stated that housing, economy, and social development are interrelated and can't do without the other.
One is the engine room that starts it, that is government, you know, and then provision of housing, if government starts provision of housing, they can see the impact there and then, because smiling faces will be all over the streets of our towns, because people have found ways to earn a living.
The expert urges the president and his new administration to make efforts to finance the sector as to stay out of recession. He also suggests that the government should give top priority to housing in order to contribute to economic growth.
I think housing is a sector that the government shouldn't toil with. And that's why we kept advising the government of President Muhammadu Buhari to to declare emergency on housing development in this country, so that the gap people are talking about should be reduced to the barest minimum.
Home ownership is a measure of household wealth and GDP. It is, however, accepted that the standard of housing in a nation indexes its effective economic development, standard of living, and its height of civilization. Therefore, the housing sector has a tremendous impact on job creation, employment, social-political stability, effective economic growth, and development of societies.
In recent years, Nigeria's economy has experienced a downturn that has had far-reaching consequences for many. While we grapple with the fuel subsidy removal and its multiplier effect on the economy, one issue that remains largely hidden, yet immensely profound, is the escalating rate of homelessness that is fast becoming a cancer. Housing TV reporters visited the Wumba district of Abuja to speak with members of the community who bear their mind on the situation they have found themselves.
I don't back now well. To house right now, land of the people now. Now 1 cup of gari is 16 naira. Before now 20 naira. Seafood now na wahala. Still not agree goes better. Now we don't come out to go first because of where we did. The government really back well. So far they say
I'm stranded. Here we are. And I don't have money to secure an apartment. It's one of my friends that supporting me now. Now in that place they sold the house. So now we are looking for money to.
Mama Prosper, as she is fondly called in her neighborhood, is a mother of 4 who could be seen displaying her frustrations, having been subjected to a lifestyle she never envisaged.
Come here tomorrow, even though I talk finish. May leave me alone. May the government come help me.
The economic downturn has created a vicious circle with job losses and soaring cost of living, pushing more and more people into homelessness. Many have lost their livelihoods as companies downsize or close down altogether. The dwindling economy has also led to a significant rise in poverty level, making it increasingly difficult for low-income individuals to afford decent housing.
I don't like the house, but they already pushing me for the house now because I did not have money. 2 months now, I don't get what to eat. It's problem now.
As I'm a family man, we are 7. We are living at one room. So I'm not okay. I'm assuming that this our country is okay. I'm not supposed to live one room. I feel the government to help us, to help the poor masses. So that instead of them to diminish some places, because when they do it like that, people, other place where they will go, they will not see the place where they will live. No money, nothing.
The impact on children and vulnerable populations is particularly heart-wrenching. Young kids who should be enjoying their childhood are instead forced to navigate the harsh realities of life on the street. The lack of education and healthcare services further aggravates their plight.
Make the government see our people where they work now. Our Ghana security, our house now. I don't even see who I will see when they pay the landlord. Me and my children will live 1 room because I 2 room with the rent. Now 1 room will come back because the money don't increase. Make government help us. See the poor people who will not get work. Make them open small business or small work for us. Where we go feed the money that come up because we spend money train our children. Business now not get hate.
These residents are appealing to governments at all levels, organizations, and well-meaning Nigerians to come to their aid and address these issues with empathy and urgency.
Make government, make government just calm down, or may just make our Nigeria better, make we get small places where we go use to stay.
With the saddening plight that has bewildered these residents, it is only imperative for all concerned to provide shelters and access to healthcare as well as educational opportunities to those in need, promoting policies that stimulate economic growth and create jobs, thereby tackling these monsters called homelessness to its roots. These will in turn foster a more secured environment for all in the future. For Housing TV Africa.
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. There will be throw dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you still have to 30 tenants, they are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
Things to note when building a house. Use good building materials. In a bid to do a fast and cheap project, some builders are in the habit of using substandard materials without taking cognizance of the serious negative effects that this could have on the buildings. I urge you to please avoid the use of poor building materials, as you might end up suffering more than you bargained for when such buildings collapse. Foundation Challenge. It is common practice for building owners and developers to convert bungalows to story buildings. Usually, these people either ignore or are unaware of the fact that the foundation for a bungalow should not be used for a story building, as it was not designed for such excess load. Just as you cannot transport a trailer on a car, it would be disastrous for you to convert a bungalow to a story building, except the foundation was initially designed for multiple stories. Employ the services of professionals. To avoid collapse of buildings, employ the services of laborers and builders who are adequately skilled and can interpret the building design. This is one good reason for the importance of professional supervision in building construction. Nature of the soil. The nature and load-bearing capacity of the soil must be considered in a building design so as to produce a sufficient structural foundation for the building. Do you also know that the type of foundation made on dry lands is entirely different from that made on swampy areas? Lastly, ensure that building work is safe, durable, and does not endanger health, both for the current user of the building and to protect those who may buy and use the property in the future.
Over time, a lot of Nigerians have had ugly experiences with fraudsters who pose as real estate agents and trade properties not fit for purposes which they were bought or leased, and in some cases dupe buyers of their hard-earned monies. There have also been reported cases of connivance with other sets of people to outrightly defraud unsuspecting members of the public, ranging from selling properties with fake documents to selling a single property to 2 or more buyers. Many of these cases have been reported and the culprits brought to book. The real question is, how can future occurrence of fraud in the real estate industry be prevented? The chairman, Board of Trustees, Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria, Prince Olusheyi Olufadejo, in an interview with Housing Development Program, says there is need for registration of all professionals in order to regulate the real estate profession.
In order to control the incidence of fraud in real estate, there are quite a few issues that come to place. Most importantly, the need for registration, for regulation of the profession of real estate. The profession of real estate is a profession. It's not a practice that anybody, a quack, somebody can just leave any other type of employment, whether teaching, civil service, whatever they are doing, and just come because they have people who can give them contact to acquire land, to acquire funding, and just come into the profession. No, it cannot be so. If we continue to keep it on that way, then of course, the incidence of fraud.
He also says the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria would need government's backing to properly regulate the profession.
Rather than has been doing that to regulate its membership, but it's been a little difficult. So we're going to need government backing, government instruments to really regulate the profession. So whoever is coming to the profession, you know that it's going to have certain qualities, certain qualifications, certain experience, which will make he or her be acceptable to practice real estate. It's not just that you just jump into practice of real estate.
In taking precautionary measures when trying to acquire a property, Prince Olusheyi says the best thing to do is to ensure that one is in contact with the right regulatory agencies and departments in order not to be misguided.
Well, I guess if you want to acquire land, the issue of land is a big problem in the country. You find a lot of quacks who are dealing with land, who say they have land titles, which are fake titles. And I think the best thing to do is to ensure that you are in contact with the regulatory agencies, land information people, land departments of various governments. Most ensure that you are getting the right information for acquisition of land. Dealing with people who are carrying papers around, CFOs around, will not be good use. Most of these papers they are carrying around, they are fake documents. You cannot stand the test of time.
In ending this problem, however, there is the need for the government and stakeholders to work hand in hand to achieve this aim.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
Quite fundamental to the attainment of affordable housing goals in any nation is for stable housing policy, presence of political will, and proper implementation of sustainable housing policies. For a country to meet its affordable housing expectations, there must be a stable macroeconomic environment. In Nigeria, the situation is not helped by high inflation rates and nominal interest rates. Not only does a volatile economy like Nigeria reduce affordability of mortgages, but also affect the supply of funds and the types of mortgages offered by lenders. In this report, some stakeholders in the Nigeria housing industry speak on ways to address the issue of housing affordability in Nigeria. Brigadier General Tunde Res, retired, the president and founder of First World Communities, says there is need to come up with policies that will address the affordability issue, which is the biggest obstacle to large-scale delivery of affordable housing.
We need to come up with policies that will address the affordability issue, because affordability is the biggest obstacle to large-scale delivery of affordable housing. Even where developers have capacity to deliver large number of houses, the fact that off-takers cannot afford them will not help them to progress to another phase. So if we can find a way to create policies or products or an environment that will bridge that affordability, and we will start to unlock other possibilities in the housing industry.
Dr. Hanatu Adamu Fika, the Executive Secretary of the Federal Government Staff Housing Loans Board, says the CBN should work towards making mortgages available at single-digit rates.
What we are appealing to government is to create a conducive environment to encourage the Central Bank of Nigeria to talk with the banks, as it happens in all countries of the world, because any company that is into provision of mortgages for citizens of any country, loans are supposed to be given to these companies at single-digit rates, so that it will impact on the delivery of houses.
For the Managing Director, Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, Kehinde Ogundimu, he says there is need to sort out the cost of funds itself, how people borrow to own houses, how much they pay on their interest.
We also now need to sort out the cost of funds itself, which is how people borrow to build the houses, how much they pay to borrow to build the houses, or how much people pay on their mortgage as interest. So that cost is also very essential. So by solving the cost of funds problem or issue, you solve the cost of the houses itself and you solve the affordability on the other side. So the houses become cheaper and then people are able to afford to make their mortgage or monthly payments, because rates are down, the cost of fund is down.
The gap between supply and demand for housing is an issue for the government to address in order to provide housing at a cheaper rate, which is the basic need of man.
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. There will be throw dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you still have to 30 tenants, they are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
The issue of housing deficit has been growing from bad to worse, and successive governments from the time of Nigeria's independence have been grappling with this problem. Today, the country's housing deficit is between 15 to 20 million units, and for a country with a population of nearly 200 million people, it is particularly disheartening. It has been stated that to meet the shortfall, the country will require a minimum of an additional 2 million housing units per annum for 10 years. Speaking with Housing Development Program on ways to closing the nation's housing deficit gap, some stakeholders prefer solutions. Andrew Chikwande says there must be a strong political will, of which housing must be on top of the government's agenda.
Our advice really is that there has to be strong political will. Housing must be on top of the government agenda. Housing must be given the right resources, and we as Shelter Afrique want to work with the Nigerian government on the supply side through the supporting of public-private partnerships, where government comes in with land or subsidized infrastructure, and then we come in with funding and also developers that have the capacity to build 1,000 units of housing and more.
For this stakeholder, she says there is need to provide an enabling environment and allow the private sector to play in the market.
Moving forward, I think it is government's responsibility to provide the enabling environment and allow the private sector to play in the market. So if things like access to land, titling, infrastructure, those things are dealt with by government and made available, then private sector will come with its funds and provide the houses in a way that meets the needs of the people. There is no point providing housing that people cannot afford or that people cannot live in. It is necessary for you to provide what meets your peculiar housing environment.
For Samuel Thompson, he says focusing on core middle-class demand will go a long way in addressing the problem.
I believe that we have to, despite the difficulties, we have to focus on core middle-class demand and intelligently use that to coalesce around the provision of housing, not just for the middle class, but for the the least affordable housing, but with the core and with certain types of enhancements, employer assisted, building on growth corridors, improving access to finance, those kinds of things that can help us to gradually expand and make our cities look better and address the housing deficits that we face.
The federal government has promised to address Nigeria's housing deficit by delivering 1 million houses per year to close to 17 to 20 million shortfalls by the year 2033. It is hoped that with public-private partnership, this promise can be fulfilled in the coming years.
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. They'll be thrown dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you still have to 30 tenants, they are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
Nigeria is one nation that continues to experience rise in population growth, especially in her urban centers. These and the combination of an inefficient mortgage system, poverty, increasing construction costs, land acquisition and processing, high inflation, and declining household income have made access to decent and affordable housing difficult for many Nigerians. For some experts, the adoption of public-private partnership, PPP, in housing provision in Nigeria is the way to go, as this will help increase urban housing stock and address housing affordability and accessibility challenges. However, not so many are aware of the benefits therein. For Professor Charles Inyangete, Chief Executive Officer at Innovative Risks and Investment Solutions Limited, public-private partnership has helped in the ease of land allocation, while also pointing out the need for active follow-up in ensuring the land is affordable and well situated for use.
One area that PPP has been put into use is in land and sharing land between private developers and the public sector, which, let's say, government or state government. That still needs to be strengthened, it needs to be improved, because it's not sufficient just to allocate land. You also have to follow through the whole processes relating to making it affordable. Give the land in a good location, be ready to give the approvals, in a rapid manner, because at the end of the day, you are part of that partnership. No point giving the land, and when it comes to gain approvals, it's taking months and months and even years. Simplify the processes for private developers who want to come in, so they understand what your processes are as a state. So, and also, you don't need to collect stamp duty at the levels that they are. And the private sector should be also more transparent in the way it deals with the public sector. So it works two ways.
Speaking on how public-private partnership can be effective, Engineer Nicholas Ogbedu, CEO Zefcan Groups, says profit-making shouldn't be the priority of PPP, but each party must ensure that they carry out due diligence in fulfilling their obligation.
Now, the PPP shouldn't be all about profit. Ability to what? Bring in different ideas. Interministerial meeting. The Ministry of Works, do the road, do the lights. Don't promise what you cannot do. FCDA, provide the land, give approval, give a CFO for the land, so that a developer will do those things for 10 million or 6 million. Now, Ministry of Rural Electrification Agency, give power infrastructure to those estates. Because these are civil servants or people who are contributing to NHF. I've served for 35 years. What is wrong in giving them road, light, and water?
He urged government to engage private professionals who are willing and ensure policies are not just formulated, but implemented and sustained.
Government is all about program, but policy formulation. You understand? When you formulate policy, being able to what? Implement. Implementation is not there. And continuity. Now, I take for instance the FISH program, the Federal Integrated Staff Housing Program for the purpose of the head of state. It failed because they are not listening to the private individual.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing development broadcasting.
Well, it's actually an unplanned settlement, and so is not really planned. So people just get by. People just get by as they can. If they break down and rebuild, what are they going to be rebuilding for? The average person here cannot afford it. The average person here cannot afford it. So I mean, it's very wrong. If the government should think of demolishing this place, that's catastrophic. That's adding salt to injury on the lives of the everyday common man. These people are just trying to get by. It's not a crime for them to come into the FCT. That they are in the FCT does not mean they should be terrorized or they should be, they should be demonized or make them feel like the scum of the environment, The government should prioritize spending and alleviate poverty of the masses. Give people access to capital. Let people go back to their villages and go and farm. Let people go back to their homes and not necessarily see the FCT as a milking point.
What I want government to do, first and foremost, is security aspects of the life of the citizens. I think you should give your citizens hope. It's hope that the citizens really want. They really want that hope. Nigeria, if you give Nigerians hope that wait for me between now and 2024, Nigeria will accept patience.
I am not comfortable. Everything now is not good. We are no longer enjoying our mandate. The worst part that we, the masses, are passing through now is the government is collecting from us instead of the government making the masses comfortable. This is Wumba in Abuja. The kind of government that we want, a government that will empower the masses.
For me, it's not good for them to come do demolition. Make them bring government school come here. As they here, not everybody go afford private school. So we need government to come help us bring school, government school, primary school for us here. So we have challenge for that one, for the community here.
What I think the government should provide for me personally, the 3 basic needs of man, which is food, shelter, and clothing. Then, instead of chasing us away from this rural area, they should take us to an urban area as a good citizen of this country. Because we have been exercising our franchise by voting for them, doing other things. I think we should be also taken care of on our own needs too, by providing us with social amenities. I think by so doing we improve. Social amenities such as water, light, especially light and water. I think we are okay. Roads, environmental sanitation. Look at the environment now. It's not clean at all. But we are here. No health facility, nothing of such. So we are believing by the grace of God.
My living condition in this environment is that the government are not treating us well. Hunger full everywhere, especially food stuff. People are dying for hunger, no food, no money, no job. The little one people are managing, the demolition is everywhere. So we are not happy about it. Let government bring food stuff down so that poor man will eat.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
In Nigeria, there is a pressing issue confronting both urban and rural dwellers alike, which is informal settlements. Informal settlements are residential areas that do not comply with local authority requirements, conventional or formal townships. They are unauthorized and are located upon land that has not been proclaimed for residential use. Informal settlements are often characterized by overcrowding and limited access to basic services. The population living in these conditions continues to grow, posing numerous challenges. Living conditions within informal settlements are marked by inadequate housing, limited access to clean water and sanitation, unreliable electricity. Families often live in cramped spaces with little privacy or security. The dire living conditions in informal settlements take a toll on the health and education of residents, particularly children.
We are suffering for this place because we'll be having security challenges, having road challenges, and have primary school challenges. We don't have any primary school, and we don't have a regional health care. That's our challenge, but God help us with one of our brother, Mr. Honorable Miakalangu. That's the only person help us for this community to do us road. That's achievement we achieve for now for federal government. We need government to, our children are crossing to do say going primary school. All of our schools here is a private. We don't have any standard federal government school in this Mumba community. So we are crying for federal government that they should try and do us primary school. That's our major challenge on this village. I'm a leader of the palace here, and I'm a commander of Vigilante Group of Nigeria. Since we are here, no any help of government. It's unless Mr. Kalongo came in now.
In the advanced countries of the world, like America and other cities, there's what we call conferral of social benefit system. Under the conferral of social benefit system, what the government do majorly that the government take part of the income of the state, part of the income be given to several states, like being disbursement to several local government chairmen, disbursement to state governors. They take part of it and build something like a city. The city is not just a hotel, but a place where homeless people stay and they are cared for. Those people they have security there. They have buy-borne water there. And at any time that anybody get a lucrative job, they leave the city and they pull other people, other numbers who have no home to replace them in the city there.
The government has recognized the urgency of addressing the informal settlement crisis. Various intervention programs and policies have been put in place to uplift the living conditions of those affected. Initiatives include affordable housing schemes, improved access to clean water and sanitation, and upgrading of infrastructure within informal settlements. While progress has been made, challenges persist. Insufficient funding, bureaucratic hurdles, and sheer scale of the issue remain obstacles to comprehensive change.
We have many challenges here, which is government have to intervene. One, sometimes all this insecurity, but as a vigilante commander has said, it's trying, and also the acting chief, village head, they are trying. So we need more help from the government.
We could have a community house in other aspects of the town where these people can find a way, because sometimes it's hard to get the means to pay for a house rent, especially in the capital center. So, but the only way we can do that is when we have affordable housing. Then these people can have a place, or they can have something to live on. So the government has a role to subsidize house for low-income earners.
Informal settlements in Nigeria remain a complex challenge. They are not without hope. As a government, communities and organizations work together, there is a potential for positive change.
Biggest challenge, before I answer your question, is the fact that Abuja cannot write the policy, the housing policy for Borno. Abuja cannot write the housing policy for Abuja. It has to be indigenized. The housing requirements in terms of the make, the landscape, it's different. So as long as we have a national, in terms of the implementation, as long as Abuja or the federal wants to implement state housing needs, it's dead on arrival. On the flip side of that, the biggest thing, in my opinion, the biggest opportunity I see for Nigeria is the NIN. If we leverage on the NIN, it will change the nature of risk. We can go into things like risk-based pricing. I mean, we can do a lot of things. How do we leverage alternative credit references? People pay their electric bills, people pay their insurance bills, people pay, outside of the normal credit card. How can we tap into these things? We need to start thinking outside the box. Tisha mentioned talk about issues. We shouldn't be scared. I shouldn't be scared to tell you that, look, what you're doing is wrong. We can do this, So we need to start having sincere conversations. We need to start, even if we don't like it, we're not going to like everything we say, which is why many people don't like me, but I don't care, we need to have this serious conversations. The money is there. We have very reputable real estate developers, builders, How can they tap into the diaspora market?
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. They'll be thrown dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you still have to 30 tenants. They are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
A land lease, also called a ground lease, is a lease agreement that permits the tenant to use a piece of land owned by the landlord in exchange for rent. Land leases work very similarly to the way traditional property leases operate, and tenants can enter into both residential and commercial agreements. In Nigeria, there are cases where a land without proper titling is leased to a tenant, and on the long run, someone else comes to claim ownership of such land. In such case, the tenant will be affected, and businesses will be affected if the property is used for commercial purposes. This is the case of these small business owners who paid for lease of land to set up their shops. These shops are located in Lugbe area in the Capital Territory, and various Nigerians depend on these structures to fetch their daily income, but it now seems their source of living is about to be cut short. These shop owners who build batcher shops after a land lease agreement are lamenting that the landowners have reneged on their agreement and are asking them to quit the property despite having met their financial obligations.
Problem we're facing here with the indigenous of Abuja, especially Lugbe here, they sell this our land to us. In fact, some of us rent it, but we buy it. So they are now coming back, that they're chasing us, they want their land, they want to build. After building, they want to rent us to us after selling it to us, which is very, very bad.
They complain that the land was sold to them to make use of for a particular period, but now they are being asked to move out before expiration of their rent.
We want government to help us about the shop, because those baggy people, especially in this zone 5, they want to cause more trouble because they already sold the shop to some people, the land to some people. Then they now come again that they did not sold the land, that we should try and pay money to them. So they want to destroy our shop. Then we are just managing because we don't have money to collect shop by 200,000, 150, 100. But we are managing Bacha for now. So we want government to intervene into this issue now because they say they want to destroy our shop.
These shop owners plead for the intervention of government in order for the source of their livelihood not to be taken away from them. It is hoped that with the right intervention, cases of lands being owned by multiple persons will be addressed.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
One of the observable impacts of rapid growing urbanization and economic development in emerging cities of developing nations is witnessed in drainage problems connected with housing. Housing in Nigeria are faced with countless issues regarding poor drainage systems and watertight structures, which are the major causes of flooding. Improper drainage system, which is the backlog of land or property in a built environment, particularly in more crowded areas, are caused by rainfall, overwhelming the capacity of drainage systems. Also, more buildings are collapsing during the rainy season, partly due to poor drainage system. A partial collapse of a commercial building in Lagos has recently been reported. Poor drainage system has devastating effects on housing. Lokogoma is one of the extensive estate development areas in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where houses are constructed directly on drain channels, and this practice has resulted to blockage of storm drains and consequently leading to overflow and flooding of streets. Due to this, the area is a nightmare when the rain starts. Inhabitants of this area have complained of terrible flooding when it rains and how they get trapped in their houses. The flooding caused by poor drainage has affected lives and properties.
You can see even during the rainfall, people cannot even go out. Some are even trapped in their houses. The last one that happened about 5 days ago, I even learned somebody died in one of the estates there because of the flooding and all that. And they should be up and doing. The plan is all this infrastructure supposed to even be in place before these houses are springing up. The access roads are supposed to be there so that people will now know where to direct their own flows. But they are not there.
Last week, the flood gets to my house, and so many houses there. Some of the residents have even packed out. You can see our cars. We go to mechanic place nearly every weekend. The security is poor. The road access is bad. When I leave my house, before I get to my office, it's more than 1 hour.
What can be done about this? Speaking with housing development, this inhabitant says proper infrastructure should be provided to alleviate the suffering of those who live in the area.
The problem we are having here is not the drainages in the estate. It is the major drainages, which is principally the work of the government. You can see where we are standing now. You can see what is happening here now. There are no channelizations. And I believe the FCT administration should also make use of ecological fund, which is principally made for this kind of intervention. Because ecological fund is there for them to do channelizations, stormwater drainage like this. Let them look at it critically, put all these infrastructures in the budget. It can't be done in a year, but let us see that there's a progressive attempt at solving this problem.
Poor drainage system is one of the factors that affect the foundation and walls of a house. It is important, therefore, to note that before building, there is need to understand the topography of an area before it will help determine the water table level. A house built in a poorly drained area is susceptible to flooding, especially during the rainy season.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
In the late 19th century, when a woman married, she had virtually no rights. She was regarded as an addition to the property owned by her husband. She was not equal to him in the eyes of the law and had the same legal status as an innocent person or a criminal. The Married Women's Property Act of 1882 was an act of the Parliament of the United Kingdom which significantly altered English law regarding the property rights of married women, which besides other matters allowed married women to own and control property in their own right. In bringing the application of this law to Nigeria, Barrister Wisdom Olum, an Abuja-based legal practitioner, cites Section 42 of the Nigerian Constitution as saying the rights women have over property is equivalent to that of the men. He says, in accordance with the Married Women Property Act of 1882, if a man decides to divorce a woman who has kids for him, she is entitled to his property for the sake of the children.
Under the law, when we are talking of the right women have under the property, the right they have over any property is equivalent to that of the men. Because if you look at our law, both international and domestic laws, first look at international laws. If you look at the 1946 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you will discover that the law is very specific. That the right you have is the equal right I have.
Further speaking, Barrister Olum says if the marriage is done under the law and the woman has no kids, the property is jointly shared in the case of divorce, and that will be according to the discretion of the court.
If, for instance, someone is married to another and the both of them were contributing their money together to build a property, in the solution of the marriage, the property have to be shared based on their contribution. And that will be at the discretion of the courts, the way you convince the court and made your case. Because that is the law.
In the incidence of death of the husband, except the husband has a will to that effect, the property belongs to the wife.
If you marry under the act and you have a property you jointly owned, of course, you know, in this 21st century, what husband and wife does is that they will open a company. Once you open a company, your husband is a director and you are a director of the company. Except the husband have a will to that effect, the property belongs to the wife. Because the wife, as a director of the company, automatically becomes the owner of the property at the death of the man.
Parties are hereby advised to approach the court of competent jurisdiction when it comes to claiming a property.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
Into this mortgage of 18, this is my first time of hearing it. But I think with the little idea I have, I said it's something like having a home of your own. And my plans of having a home of my own is just being self-independent, creating job for myself, at least starting something.
The word mortgage, I think I got introduced to it in movie settings. I got to hear about it where you find a family probably at their all-time stop because they are at the verge of losing their homes. So it was from there I decided to find out what it was, and I discovered it has some legal backing to it though. I think you more like offer up your building, your house, in exchange for probably money, most likely money, and if you don't meet up with the agreement, you get your home taken away from you or your building taken away from you. So that's why I say as mortgage. And I didn't like what I saw in the movie setting. So I don't like the word at all. I don't even intend doing anything mortgage with my home.
The word mortgage is actually a financial institution or a cooperative society which help in financing projects and having houses of your own. For example, in Nigeria. And the contribution towards achieving those goals is like if the federal government can actually come in collaboration with CBN to like sponsor some property firms or sponsor the youth in owning properties of their own.
A little I know about mortgage. I think the first time I heard that word was on Nollywood, one of their movie Money Yab Man. So Sam Loco actually was the one that used that word, mortgage. From there, I began to find out what it's all about, mortgage, and I found that it had to be like a kind of business term that have to do with buying and selling houses on loan, or buying a house on loan, or trying to acquire, to sell your own property on loan. And that's a little I know about mortgage.
Okay, mortgage is when you go to a bank. In the process of doing this, we have what we call a collateral. That is, it could be property, it could be land, it could be house, it could be just a landed property or something, which worth much more than the money or the money. So, should in case there's a default in you returning that money you've loaned from a bank, then you lose your interest. I mean, your interest over that property.
Okay, mortgage. I don't really know much about mortgage. I just believe in, saving towards that, save towards owning a house of your own.
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. They'll be thrown dead on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you still have to 30 tenants, they are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
A mortgage is a legal agreement that allows you to borrow money from a bank or building society at a specific interest rate in order to build or buy a house. Interest rates on mortgage loans in Nigeria ranges from 15% to 25% per annum, including fees and other charges. The question which comes to mind is, with these sort of interest rates, can low-income earners honestly afford a mortgage on steady salary? Yemi Adelakun, MD CEO, NISH Affordable Housing Limited, in an interview with Housing Development Program, says Nigeria needs a more creative method of funding housing, as the interest rate for mortgages cannot be afforded by the low-income earner.
NISH has been engaging experts in this area for the last 2 years. We have done the Nigeria Housing Finance Conference for 2 years now. Equity financing is one of the options. The contractors themselves can finance. Presently, most of our developers depend on contracts to do their houses, depend on off-takers' advance payment to do their houses. No. If they consolidate their efforts, they put their heads together, they'll be able to fund houses based on guarantees. Off-takers, bankable, off-takers guarantee. Once you guarantee that, a good developer should go to site, build the houses with the hope and knowledge that as soon as he finishes the job, there's an exit strategy. The off-takers already have the fund waiting for him to purchase the house.
He opts for social capital as a way to finance affordable housing, as practiced in other countries.
In other countries, they have used social capital to finance affordable housing, and that is done through cooperative system. In Zimbabwe, in Kenya, they have done very well using social capital to support affordable housing. Another way of doing it is federal government coming out strongly with intervention fund, like other countries. They have done it before in these countries, especially in Abuja, when federal government was selling houses. You can go to any bank at that time and obtain loan for 7%.
Mortgages were specifically designed to make home ownership more affordable to average Nigerian, but so far that hasn't been achieved with the Nigerian mortgage system. Speaking on the need to find solutions to housing finance, Adelakun says governments can empower commercial banks to give preferential rates to off-takers to fund housing at single-digit interest rates.
You can also empower commercial banks to give preferential rates to off-takers to fund the housing at single-digit interest rate. Presently, any interest rate beyond 10% is not doable for housing, and that's why NISH has been engaging experts in this area for the last 2 years. We have done the Nigeria Housing Finance Conference for 2 years now. Equity financing is one of the options, which is very, very good.
With sound policies, better data, and increased access to affordable credit, it is believed an enabled housing market can increasingly provide housing that the average household in Nigeria can afford.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
Over the years, the number of building collapses in the country has been on the rise. Despite repeated calls by victims, experts, and many other Nigerians, there seemed to be no end to the collapses. Of more concern, according to experts, is the lack of punishment for those responsible for the collapses. The recent collapse of a school building in Lagos State, with over 10 pupils killed, has sparked outrage from the general public and concerned bodies. One would ask, what is the role of inspection and building approval officers, the government, professional bodies in the building and construction sector, and the likes in curbing cases of building collapse in the country? In looking into the case of building collapse, it has been discovered over the years that people responsible for building failures are those who are not engineers, the quacks.
Over the years, by virtue of my position, I've had cause to investigate or receive investigation reports of failures of construction projects. And in each of the cases, the people responsible for such have been people who are not engineers. And the reason being that the client engaged those who are not engineers to do engineering jobs. So the resultant effect is the collapse. If, for instance, instead of if you have issues, medical issues, and you go and see an engineer, we are asked, eventually you are committing suicide. So in the same way, if you also have an engineer issue and you contact a doctor, you are planning to fail. So what we have seen over the years is people using people who are not qualified. And that is a consequence. There isn't anyone that can really spin to an engine up to today.
Building collapse means there was totally no attention given to the structure from the onset. The former Director General, Nigerian Building and Research Institute, Professor Danladi Matawa, says there is need to conduct investigation on the site before construction begins to avoid collapse.
If it is because of ground wetting or softening, it means that the failure started as a consequence of foundation caving in or failing. Now, this is avoidable because if you go to a location for a structure, the first thing after you survey the site, the town planning to give the site plan, the next thing you set out to do is to conduct a thorough subsoil investigation called geotechnical investigation.
According to these experts, building collapse cases have been linked to quacks. In order to prevent future reoccurrence, then, professional bodies in the build sector should be made to set up a database of their members' ongoing and completed projects, so those involved in bad projects can face sanctions if found culpable.
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. There will be throw dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you still have to 30 tenants, they are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
Paint Manufacturers Association of Nigeria have called on all paint producers to desist from cutting corners in paint production, as this would lead to increase in imported products. The chairman of the association, Abimbolu Babatunde, gave this charge during the 2019 coating show organized by the Paint Manufacturers Association of Nigeria on Monday, 28 October 2019 in Lagos State. Speaking with Housing Development, Abimbolu Babatunde says manufacturers should ensure they manufacture quality products that are accepted worldwide in order to take advantage of the single market in Africa.
We are hoping that a number of people will be open to the new ideas that must take place. It's not that they were whether we want it will take, and it has to do with the paint itself, with the raw material that we incorporate into it, with the manufacturing equipment we use, and of course the market that we sell into.
Also representing the Minister of State for the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Francis Zalaneme says the ministry is working towards reducing the use of toxic chemicals in paint production.
Most of them, like we have identified, are toxic and are not really good to our health and also to the environment. So in order to balance it, we try to see what can be done to transit from these toxic chemicals to free toxic chemicals and see how we can make the environment free of these hazardous chemicals.
For Professor Babajide Alo, there is need for manufacturers of paint to do away with ingredients that contain lead, which is harmful to the health.
The advocacy is that let us avoid use of lead ingredients in paint. Other countries have adopted it, so it's not rocket science. It's not as if it's an impossibility. We have found in other countries, developed countries particularly, they have now avoided use of leaded ingredients. Therefore, we're saying Nigeria should also join. In fact, Nigeria has signed into the global accord. So we have a responsibility to meet with the obligations of that global accord. And at the local level, SARS Organization of Nigeria has come up with a limit of 90 ppm that is allowed for lead materials in paint. We are saying the paint industry should comply, should join in this vanguard of avoiding use of lead ingredients in the paint that they are selling.
The theme, which is Future Trends in Coating Technology, aims at preparing those in the industry for the technological changes that are bound to take place in paint manufacturing.
To get started, just to kind of set the context for the discussion. Our world is changing, but there's nowhere perhaps where that change is more evident than in sub-Saharan Africa, where we are witnessing perhaps the greatest and largest rate of urbanization in the recent history of mankind. If you take Nigeria as an example, by 2050, which perhaps is within the lifetime of many people in this room, our population will have doubled to just over 400 million people. Those realities offer to us a challenge and opportunities. And to harness those opportunities requires a different mindset, a different thinking, and innovation in terms of how we address perhaps that most basic of human needs, housing, and the approaches to financing it. We'll let Dr. Obadiah go first, and I think he's going to set the scene with some macroeconomic and top-level data around where we are. You're welcome to the podium, Dr. Obadiah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I believe that housing is a right, and that we need to approach it from that perspective, that for all citizens, access to adequate and decent housing should be part and parcel of the rights of citizenship, and that it is the responsibility of government to create the right conditions for people to have access to decent and adequate housing. Two, I believe that the private sector should be the key driver of housing development. But government also has to create the enabling environment as well as the institutional support system for the housing development sector to flourish. The message I have is that we need a paradigm shift. In this country, there's not much talk about family. If you want to avoid a revolution, a violent revolution, then you'd better have a strong middle class, because it acts as the bulwark between the poorest groups and the richest groups. And the middle class tend to have a vested interest in stability. They are mostly professionals, teachers, engineers, architects, doctors, and the rest of them. So we need that paradigm shift that will deliberately aim to develop housing as part and parcel of social engineering to create a more stable society.
Why is the U.S. government financing housing in Africa? We have a housing problem in the United States. We do. Yes. We need affordable housing in the U.S. There's an affordable housing problem everywhere. maybe not in Singapore, but in a lot of places, there's an affordable housing problem. So why are we doing this? And my answer is, we have housing agencies. We have FHA and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and local municipal housing agencies that are providing all kinds of support for affordable housing in the United States. But OPIC's job is foreign policy related. Our job is to support developing countries from a pure, practical foreign policy standpoint. We want to build relationships with countries where we have foreign policy interests. That's logical, and that's part of our role. We're aligned with the U.S. Department of State in that regard. But we also have a mandate to support economic development in emerging markets, because economic development improves security locally for people, for residents of the country, but for the rest of us, everywhere else in the world. So economic security in Africa means economic security for people in the United States. And I think that that's a message that doesn't always come across clearly when we're trying to explain to people in the U.S. who are not familiar with what OPIC does, why it's so important that we do this. And the reason I believe in housing as a mechanism for achieving this is all of the points that were made this morning. They're so critical. The home, a house is a basis for family stability, for economic stability, for education, health, just simple health of children and their ability then to carry on with having a job and getting an education. All of those mechanisms of stability are so critical to everything else that a government platform, a social platform is built upon. So that's why I think housing is so important.
At the top of our lungs, just shout, "Aluta continua." Okay. Let me start off and just give you a tip of what you're supposed to say. "Aluta continua." That is how we feel about the struggle in affordable housing. The struggle continues, and as Femi has explained, I'm going to explain a bit why. Our focus is public-private partnerships. Why? We want to work with governments because they have the land. And some governments can actually deliver on the infrastructure or subsidize the infrastructure. And then, why? Because that is the only way we can achieve large-scale delivery of affordable housing. And also, our focus and our obsession as South Africa is to work with tried and tested developers that, Debbie would want to fund, that IFC obviously would want to also work with, so that we can deliver at scale and we minimize the development risk. Having been created in 1982, what have you done for Nigeria, South Africa? So we've approved in excess of $178 million in terms of projects. Just last 2 weeks, with our board, we approved another 2 big lines of credit for 2 local banks. I thought, since we want to do a proper launch at the end of the month, we will announce to the market who are those. Is it ever enough? Of course, it's not enough. We've got to keep doing more. So we've come back to the market. For those who are really interested in affordable housing funding, we want to work with you. We want to collaborate with you. We want to work with the governors. We want to, most importantly, work with partners that share the same vision, that is to drive the cost of affordable housing downwards.
Quality control and safety represent increasingly important concerns for project managers. Defects or failures in constructed facilities can result in very large costs. One common challenge of Nigeria's construction industry is poor quality control. Projects embarked on are often poorly executed in terms of quality assurance. There are a number of reasons for this prevailing challenge, according to Engineer Kashim Ali, President Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. He says poor quality control is as a result of miserliness in application of equipment and materials.
Most of it generally is miserliness in application of equipment and materials. What do I mean? If, for instance, a design was made to have a certain quantity of components of concrete, and then you decide on site to reduce the quantity in order to maybe to maximize profit or out of carelessness or for any other reason, that instantly reduces the quality. The character of that concrete changes. What you get is not what the designer intended.
Poor quality control can also be blamed on the control engineer at the construction site. Engineer Kashim adds that the resultant effect of poor quality control can be glaring even in the aesthetic presentation of projects, the most tragic being the collapse of structures.
And the resultant effects are very obvious and glaring, but the common one that people see easily is maybe even the aesthetic presentation of projects. Construction projects, which mainly are civil engineering projects, they are not only supposed to be structurally acceptable, they are supposed to be aesthetically appealing. So if you are supposed to have a square and you have something that is not easy to define in terms of symmetry, that is one obvious thing you see. For instance, there's supposed to be a column for a building. It's a structural engineering element that is supposed to stand straight and is now a bit curved. It shows the work was not properly done. Quality control was poor. But the most tragic one is the one that leads to collapse of such structures, whatever the structure could be. It could be a water tank, it could be a road, it could be a dam, it could be a building, a high-rise building. That becomes very obvious. Those are the key elements you see where poor monitoring has been done.
As to the way forward, he advises those who procure the services of Construction Express to hire professionals as those responsible for collapse of structures are quacked.
What we have seen over the years is people using people who are not qualified. So my advice there to engineers will be, please, let's make ourselves maybe a lot more marketable so that clients can look for us instead of looking for quacks who bring them disasters and unhappiness.
With the right professionals and workforce in a construction site, professionalism will be applied in handling projects and quality control will be ensured.
The housing sector is definitely one of the critical sectors any government in any economy must take seriously. What am I saying in a nutshell? When we work as government and as industry and as sector and as a sector to unlock the binding constraints and to drive the right policy and to properly delineate demand and supply, where they meet, and empowering our demand, the buying power of the demand. I think with that, we can, in many ways, ramp up the numbers of productivity in the sector, and by extension, the jobs, as we have seen across the value chain, that can happen in housing and that can affect every economy positively. However, even at where we are now, the question really is, with the thing that I always charge every sector and every industry to have, the value chain integration, the backward integration. Perhaps my assignment, that assignment is really to create many levels of backward integration around building materials, input, skills, so that we are able to scientifically quantify what really are the needs of this sector. What do we require to meet the needs of this sector, from not only from skill space, but from material space, from local production? And then how do government at all levels begin to leverage their limited resources with the abundance of private capital that's out there to meet those needs? The reality is the answer cannot be given by government. It's up to the sector. And I hope that the housing industry 2019 will take this on as one of the assignments that we can proffer a solution to as we move on.
What is affordable housing? Affordable housing is considered affordable when it costs less than 40% of household income. If we put together housing and transportation costs, because location is key when it comes to housing, it must not exceed 60% of income to be considered affordable. Housing can be made affordable by households in many different ways. Self-construction is one way of achieving that. Informality, very often when the formal market offers housing that's too expensive, is another way of achieving affordability. Rental can be one way to achieve affordability. The fact that families with members from several generations live together is a way to achieve affordability. And we can also have other forms of cohabitation when people who are not from the same family share housing to make it more affordable. Some people use their home as their workspace in order to decrease costs. And finally, housing can be made affordable when it is supported by government programs and interventions within the formal sector as well. And interventions do not all depend on the private sector and do not all depend on the government, sometimes also on the household. So it's important that all stakeholders come together and look at the kind of interventions that can be done to decrease costs and improve affordability. It's important to keep the household at the center, again, because cheaper, yes, but to whom? For instance, the absence of infrastructure or having minimum infrastructure can reduce the cost, but it does increase the cost for the user, for the household who must compensate the poor quality of electricity with electric generators, for instance, or who must go long distances to get clean water. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
There's a distinction between social housing and affordable housing. Social housing, by definition, is housing that the government has a large influence in, subsidizing for the benefits of the buyers, for the purchasers. Affordable housing is a notch up above that. There's less intervention, either none or less intervention by governments, and it's really driven by market forces. Again, as developers, we should also, as we're building, we should also remember that to make a development sustainable, maintenance concerns are also major. So we must build in a way that is easy to maintain for the long term. The fact of the matter is that this whole thing boils down to the human being, families, a set of families, communities, other facilities within the communities. And I think that's one thing that Mixed Up, we pride ourselves in, that our slogan is that we build communities. I think anybody can, put up bricks and mortar. If it's bricks and mortar you want, there's bricks and mortar all over the place. But the fact of the matter is that these bricks and mortar are meant for human beings. Human beings need more than just bricks and mortar in order to thrive. So, we talk about building communities. We talk about other facilities, schools, health facilities, play areas, police stations. And that's very, very important to build a sustainable community.
Housing is no more about shelter provision. It's a key tool in creating employment opportunity. It's a key tool in fueling growth and ensuring that we have dynamic multiplier effect in the local economy. A lot of issues have been pointed out on how we can get to where we ought to be. The key issue of collaboration, synergizing as a way forward is what I think we should engage ourselves in. And I appreciate Festus for giving us such a platform to be able to come and share from diverse backgrounds, because I have not seen that being done by government who are supposed to be at the vanguard of such an effort for collaboration, understanding of the value chain, the transaction dynamics, and how to get us to where we ought to be, and assigning roles and making regulations to ensure that everybody stays within their role, enhances it, and understands the role of their key partners and stakeholders to ensure that we have the desired end in what we are pursuing. I want to thank Deborah. You got an award yesterday. In closing, why am I thanking her? I'm thanking her for her consistency, her perseverance in a very difficult environment. And as I'm thanking her, I'm equally thanking all those who have been persevering for years in ensuring and believing that the sector will grow. And I'd like to let you know that we are coming to the end of the learning curve, and we're about to engage all the key points and make sure that the changes that we desire to make the real estate sector a destination of choice for investors is made. Thank you, and God bless you.
Decent, affordable housing is important to families. Certainly, it fulfills a basic human need for shelter, but it also contributes to the well-being of both parents and children. Decent, affordable housing reduces stress, toxins, and infectious diseases, which leads to improvement in both physical and mental health. But without electricity, humans cannot completely enjoy a decent and affordable accommodation. Electricity is fundamental to housing needs, but unfortunately, Nigerians' multi-decade-long electricity problems have remained persistent in recent years. Truth, however, is that more Nigerians lack electricity than can be imagined. People suffer in silence without complaining. Without electricity, one cannot experience comfort in a home, so this is a major necessity in every home. Housing development went into the FCT metropolis to speak to some Nigerians on the power situation in their areas.
To me, although that's where I live in Babi, the electricity issue, nothing to write home all about.
They take the light, but they bring it back. But maybe if it rains, that's when maybe they can take the whole day at night. If there is
However, the people have urged the government to look into this situation with effect to the provision of meters to each home, enabling them to know the exact unit at which power is being consumed.
Sure, it's very important so that they can whatever they are sure more transmission of power.
I advise the government to increase power supply, electricity supply, because there are areas that don't have like the public
they brought like 300,000 naira for just 1 month. The best thing is for us to use meter so we can regulate the amount of light.
Instead of sitting down one place doing nothing, let them go out, do researches, find out, go to the local areas, go to the local places, go and look at what people are facing. They don't give you lights and they still give you bills. If you're not using the lights, then where is the bill coming from? People can't even feed yet, and you are telling them about electricity. Electricity that you are not even seeing.
Electricity is vital to comfort in every home because when people experience comfort in their homes, it translates to national development. It is hoped that the new administration would look into this issue.
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. They'll be thrown dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you still have to 30 tenants, they are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much, the police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
A substandard building is not just a house that is old or outdated. It is a building that constitutes a high risk to the health and physical well-being of its occupants, neighbors, and visitors. Substandard building conditions most frequently include holes, cracks, peeling paint, leaking roofs, and broken basic systems like heating. These are physical deterioration factors. Some other cases of substandard buildings include outdated or dangerous electrical systems, rusting or loose pipes, and gas leaks. These can all pose significant safety hazards that might go unnoticed until an accident happens. Reports have revealed that most of the shabbily built houses were not only blamed on the topography of the city, but the use of substandard building materials by developers during construction.
There is no excuse whatsoever for a substandard house. The developer has a duty to build a house that is standard. When you have a substandard house, in one way or another, there has been collusion. Possibly the developer is cheating on materials, cement content, buying poor quality materials. Number two, the authorizing authority, he is not doing his job by supervising what the developer is building.
The increase in the number of substandard houses in the city and suburbs in Nigeria has raised pertinent questions on whether relevant agencies monitor the quality of buildings springing up daily.
Their job is supervising what developers build. They approve the buildings. They should approve buildings that are good in structure, in strength, in air ventilation, in lighting. They should approve buildings such properly. Two, they're supervisors. The government is supervisor, whether it's an agency of government or a ministry of government, they are the supervisors. They supervise what the developer is building. That is where government comes in. They should just simply do their job.
To avoid having substandard buildings in Nigeria, there should be strict laws that should require landlords to keep their properties in safe, habitable conditions and to abide with building laws. Another sure strategy towards improving the quality and durability of houses is in training of artisans. This would reduce from the scratch the problem of substandard buildings cropping up. It is, however, advised that those whose homes are in dilapidation should contact their developers for actions to be taken. More importantly is the need to have an expert come inspect the property if an occupant suspects there is an issue with a building.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
Iron rod is one material required when building a structure all over the world. We all know that the current rise of prices in Nigeria has affected a lot of things, including building materials. Today, we want to find out the current price of iron rod in the market, and also we want to find out what really is the problem when it comes to building collapsing. Is it inferior iron rods or another building material? Who knows? I am Mimuna Bagudu. Join me on this fact finding.
For many years, the cost of building materials in Nigeria has been a source of concern because it has a direct impact on the affordability and accessibility of housing for the typical Nigerian. The cost of building materials has risen drastically recently as a result of high inflation rate, foreign exchange rates, and removal of fuel subsidy. Iron rods, which is one of the major components used in building, is not left out in terms of price increment. A dealer of iron rods, Topstar Omije, spoke to Housing TV Africa on the current prices of the material.
The talk of inflation is much. Like iron we are selling for 8,500, we end up selling
as we too is much. You know, before when the price drop, we make profit then because the customers, the final users, I mean the consumers are not finding it easy again, so you cannot convince them to buy it at this price. So the price rate, the income rate on our side have dropped lowest because of the price. But assuming it go down, the person will be happy to buy it at normal rate. You understand that kind of thing? To buy it at lower rate, to not get to a point. They're trying to convince somebody that's buying something 8,200, 8,000, to buy it at the rate of 10,200. You need to go around, check when you have no choice again.
When asked if the quality of iron rod used to build a structure could be a reason for collapsed buildings, top star Omiji has this to say.
That make up the building. The iron, the cement, and the sand. I think make up the building. Inside it, the iron is important of all. Then followed by casting. Because the iron hold the building. Then before the casting. If the casting is okay, I don't think the building will collapse. Then coming into iron, we have different type of iron produced by many companies. You understand? Which we will not mention.
Considering the different types of iron rods available in the market, the importance of quality cannot be overemphasized, as it is one of the pillars for having a standard structure. He further advised builders not to compromise quality for quantity, even with the present economic situation in the country, as life is too precious to be sacrificed because we want to save cost.
Coming for the price, now we have like 8 before, sold at the rate of 2,100. Now we are selling at the rate of 3,100. Now coming to 10 it was sold initially 3,200. Now we are selling 4,200. Coming to the 12 initially was 4,500. Now we are selling 5,700. Now coming to the 16 initially is 8,000, 8,500. But now we are selling at the rate of 10,200. Then finally we have 20 before was 14,000, now 16,600. And coming to 25 initially was 21,000. Now we are selling at the rate of 6,000. That's Tiger for this 25. Anybody that wants to go for 25, I think the best for 25 is Tiger. So build a structure like people going for high rising, 1 story, 2 story. I think it's best to use standard iron, quality iron. Don't look at the price because the quality matters a lot. When iron people reduce money for you, no, definitely they have reduced the quality because we have series of quality in the market. You understand? So for me to adapt for my advice to the people there, the builders, those that don't know about the iron much, I think my advice for them is to them to use the best, ask for the best, and go for the best.
Building and making housing available for all is a concerted effort that must be encouraged by both government and private sectors, but we must always do it right and not compromise on the quality of building materials to be used.
It's good news. Are you a stakeholder in the built environment, or you are looking for an authentic, credible source for housing and construction news in Africa? You now have an opportunity. Africa International Housing Show has now created a unique opportunity for you by establishing a full-fledged housing television, the first of its kind in Africa. You can now access information on home ownership, rental, building materials, finance, real estate and insurance, among others, all on Housing TV Africa, channel 149 on StarTimes.
Living in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory FCT, would mean different things to different people, depending on the side of the divide yourself. Ozo Amaka Uche, a mother of one and a graduate from one of Nigeria's private institutions, life in Abuja leaves a lot.
Apparently, no, because this environment, particularly, I don't sleep in this kind of environment because every day you hear stories of people coming to thief. Like last week, I think Thursday or Friday, Around 3 a.m., I was in this spot and people gathered. Our life is being threatened by thieves. The environment is not really prohibitory because you cannot really keep your slippers outside and come out and find that same slippers in this environment. I don't know, but living in Akodise, apparently there is no light as we speak, there is no water in Akodise.
Having been confronted with the challenge of moving from one on the grounds of reputation by the Authority SCA, she and her family found themselves in a Kodise area of Abuja, which was a last resort in order.
This house was built in 2018, but it was occupied by tenants. Then in 2019, our house is demolished in Apo Nepa Junction. So we had to give the tenants quick notice and started living in ourselves from 2019 to this day.
No doubt, Abuja Mata almost 8 passengers survived in the neighborhood with the POS bit.
So I want to live in an estate, a place that is free from thieves. So this door, we recently amended it because of thieves every night. Me apparently, because I used to sleep with money. I don't used to sleep. Any noise I heard. That's the more reason why we have dogs outside there. When we hear noise, we come and peep and see what is our next step. So I want to live in an environment that is secured so I can sleep well.
The future still remains bright, filled with lots of dreams, which is what drives it.
Okay, in the next 10 years, I want to see myself owning a bank, and that my bank will be Kingsway Bank by the grace of God. Now I bear Kingsway Enterprises. In the next 10 years, I want to see myself owning branches. First of all, I own it in Abuja. Secondly, is in my town, my state where I'm coming from, Enugu. Thirdly, maybe Nasarawa State because that is where I got my ND. Then HND Kogi State by the grace of God. I want to see employ a lot of youth in the nearest future. I want my name to be held like that of Aliko Dangote and the rest.
For lots of residents of the FCT, their fears of what may happen at the but these have in no way down the dream of what will go.
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. There will be throw dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You see a toilet, you still have to 30 tenants. They are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
Welcome to my space on Housing TV Africa, and on this program we will be delving into the intricate world of interior decoration in Nigeria. My name is Ebenezer Anukam. I am your host for the show. My space will be back shortly after this break.
Thank you, AIHS, for the opportunity of this exhibition. It was a nice experience. I would like to make it again.
Teşekkürler AIHS.
Çok teşekkürler AIHS.
Thank you AIHS. Thank you so much.
非常感谢 AIHS。
大家好，我就想很好的感谢 AIHS。
谢谢 AIHS。
Thank you everyone. Thank you AIHS.
Thank you AIHS.
Hello and welcome to the Thought Pyramid Art Center here in Abuja. My space took a little trip to this very beautiful artistic center where we are going to be looking at some of those expressions of our rich cultural heritage as a nation. It promises to be another very beautiful and enlightening episode. Why don't you come along with me? Okay. So right now, I'm about to step into the Thought Pyramid Art Center in Abuja. Come on, let's get indulged in some of those beautiful and artistic interior designs. And as you can see all around us, we can see the rich art and cultural heritage of Nigeria. We have a lot of beautiful paintings like the one behind me and some other paintings. Well, here we have another expression of great Nigerian creativity. And right here, we can see the proper use of some of our heritage materials here in Nigeria. We can see the use of Ankara infused with the use of colors, paying attention to the intricate details of the beauty of the African mother, the beauty of the African lady, and of course, in essence, the beauty of the African woman. We can even see the infusion of contemporary details. We see the use of the spectacles and the lines, paying fine attention to details. These are just one of those things we're talking about when we say that Nigeria has a rich cultural heritage that can be properly infused into interior decoration.
It's been symbolic since the 90s, and recently it's our new oil. Is a new source of the economic diversity. It creates availability of resources for the young ones. It has also taken kids off the streets. It has also helped in societal reforms also. So it's as important as education.
Now, this is a bold expression of arts and creativity in Nigeria, and we can see here the curators paid great attention to details. We can see the use of plugs, we can see the use of chains, the use of colors and irons and spanners and padlocks, and even motorcycle plugs. Very rich and very beautiful. So this is just one of those fringe expressions of what we carry as a nation, and who knows, maybe you could consider having something like this in your home. Okay, and right here on this very beautiful piece, I'm actually struggling to call it a piece of furniture maybe, but we have the use of irons here to design this sit that looks like a fish. As you can see, there are the use of proper use of irons and circles and holes, and it's shaped like a fish actually, and whoever must have done this may probably have an interest in fishing, who knows. That is what we talked about when we looked at the areas of personal preferences, our personal preferences as individuals and how they influence our use of art when designing the spaces of our homes. So take a look at this, and maybe you could even consider having something like this in your home. All right, it's been very, very beautiful. We've been at the Thought Pyramid Art Center here in Abuja, where we've just had some explosive insights into the rich cultural heritage of Nigeria. Keep it glued with my space on Housing TV Africa channel 149 Star Times. Welcome back. Now, everything we see around us is a design. The trees, the ecosystem, the buildings, the human body, and even life itself is a design. Of course, designs are a core part of our existence as humans. There's literally no facet of humanity that does not have a design undertone. That is also the case for our different spaces as individuals. From our kitchens, to our office spaces, to our bedrooms, to our sitting rooms, and any kind of space, the way we design our interiors is a very reflection of our human essence. When you visit the museum, the park, the hotels, the restaurants, you cannot help but to look out for the fine details of these places. Designs vary to reflect the theme or purpose of any space. This is what makes designs very important, and this is what my space is all about. We will be beaming the light on the detailed world of interior designs, especially here in Nigeria. The interior decoration industry has risen to meteoric height in recent years. Let's have an overview of the industry's growth. In the industry today, vibrant and bold color palettes are replacing neutral tones. In this age, people are becoming more adventurous with their interior color choices. Nigerians are continually embracing technology-driven smart innovations in interior designs, and this is becoming more prevalent in every area of the country. According to the Interior Designers Association of Nigeria, IDEN, the industry generates over 30 billion annually to the African economy, and revenue in the home decor market alone amounts to $1 billion just as we entered the year 2024, with the market expected to grow annually by 5.10%. The rich cultural heritage and diversity of Nigeria further presents the industry as a melting pot of styles and inspirations. Throughout history, the industry has been influenced by different ethnic groups and regions around the country. An essential part of Nigerian interior design is the use of symbols and motifs. Throughout history, the industry has been influenced by different ethnic groups and regions around the country. An essential part of Nigerian interior design is the use of symbols and motifs. Current trends show Nigerians are embracing the fusion of Nigerian elements with contemporary design, and this trend has come to stay. Very insightful indeed. We've just had an overview of the interior decoration industry in Nigeria. We will go on a quick break, and when we return, we will be explaining why interior designs are important in our spaces. Stay with us. Welcome back to my space. Now, moving into the reason why interior decoration has become very imperative in our designs of different spaces, a focal point in the interior design world is keen attention to details. The carefully planned details of any space is what makes it stand out. Our homes embody our different ideas of comfort and hospitality, and these ideas reflect in the choices we make when planning our interiors. Home is the ultimate abode of any individual. Most people even refer to their homes as my space. This is the reason why we need to pay close attention when designing the interiors of our homes. Now, the first factor we should consider before embarking on the interior designs of our homes is the central theme of the design. This is the first point of call before embarking on any design. The theme of the design is the central idea. Whether it is an office, bedroom, sitting room, or any space, we must understand why we are using such designs and why we are employing certain elements before going ahead to design. This can help us plan our spaces in a better way. Another very important factor to look out for is our personal preferences and styles. Your house is your castle, and you are the king or queen of this castle. Your house should be a unique reflection of your personality. Before you embark on any interior design, you must think of the things that you find appealing aesthetically. Another area of importance is getting inspiration from different sources. Designs are inspired, and the right ounce of creative input can build you great designs from almost nothing.
Imagine a cozy sanctuary in your home, reminiscent of earthly hues.
The warmed and welcoming colors offer a timeless connection to the world. These undertones can create the perfect inspiration to draw from when planning the interior of a home. Balance is key, and these bold colors, when mixed with neutral furniture and decor, such as creamy whites, soft grays, and earthly beiges, it presents a harmonious mix that allows the red and browns to shine without overwhelming your space. Often referred to as Nigerian contemporary, this is a design approach that skillfully blends modern elements with the rich cultural influences of Nigeria. It is characterized by its ability to infuse the vibrancy of traditional Nigerian culture into a contemporary living space. Traditional Nigerian interior design draws deeply from the nation's diverse and cultural heritage, showcasing a rich tapestry of customs and artistic expressions. This style is a homage to the country's history and traditions, celebrating its various ethnic groups such as the Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa, each of which brings its own unique elements to the design. Vintage fabric remnants or second-hand furniture that you can reupholster can present classic fabrics like velvet and floral prints. Popular standout fabrics like Adire, Ankara, and CBD present materials that one can draw inspiration from when designing home interior. These fabrics not only give inspiration but also tell the story of a people, our source, our essence, and our uniqueness as a country. Heritage fabrics present a rich pool from which we can draw inspiration for our home decors and any other kind of space. Nigerian minimalism is an interior design style that has gained popularity for its clean, uncluttered, and serene aesthetics. It revolves around the principle of less is more and emphasizes simplicity and functionality. Furniture decor in Nigerian minimalism features clean and straight lines. Angular shapes are preferred over ornate and intricate designs. This simplicity promotes a sense of order and tidiness. Minimalism places a strong emphasis on decluttering, and personal items and unnecessary decor are kept at a minimum. Storage solutions are often integrated into the design to keep everyday items out of sight. Locally crafted furniture and decor items are in demand, and Nigerians are embracing traditional craftsmanship in their interior design. The carefully crafted furniture and decor items are loved for the keen attention to detail. Titi Ogufere is a Nigerian interior designer, critical design thinker, and publisher at Essential Media Group. Ogufere was elected as president-elect of the International Federation of Interior Architects and Designers, IFI, in 2017. She was announced as the 21st president of the International Federation of Interior Architects and Designers, IFI, making her the first president of African descent. In 2019, she launched Design Week Lagos, DWL, an annual event. Design Week Lagos has played host to a number of key events across the city of Lagos, including Design Culture Exhibition, Made by Design Show, Tourism Investors Forum, Sound for Design,
Reflection for Happy Spaces, and Vocational Training Week.
Well, what a ride it has been on today's episode of MySpace. I hope you enjoyed it. This is where we draw the curtain for today's edition. Join us on the next episode of MySpace for more exciting insights in the world of interior design. Do not forget that you can check us out on our different social media platforms. Keep watching MySpace on Housing TV Africa, channel 149 Star Times. My name is Ebenezer Anukam. See you next time.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing development broadcasting.
In the area, our correspondent owners who were ripped off their property